I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Mikkel Nielsen, Editor on the Banshees of Inisherin. Mikkel, this is the first time that you've worked with Martin McDonagh, director, on one of his features. And so I'm curious, he often comes with a pretty dark view of the world, a vicious sense of humor, and with really compelling, stories about humanity. I'm just wondering, what were your expectations when you first signed on to edit his latest masterpiece?
I really like the script a lot, and has he got a dark view? I think there's a lot of elements in the script which I connect to as well, and then I think that I just really connected to the characters, and I also knew of his writing and his films, and found it incredibly interesting for me as editor or story. I've never tried to balance comedy and drama before, and it's also to try and see what can I maybe bring to the table, and how it would be to work with Martin and also these characters for sure, and especially what can I learn from the process, because it's always a learning process, and see how you can dig into it and be as open as possible, and therefore everything opens a little bit more, and find truthness in characters and in the story.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I imagine on a film like this, I assume that you'd be very conscious of the tone, because it shifts throughout the film from comedy to tragedy, and there's some beautiful melancholy moments and heartbreaking moments, some quite funny moments. How difficult is that to thread that needle as the editor? Because so much of the emotion comes through the edit. That's really one of your main primary roles, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the idea on a film, especially on a film like this, is to almost be invisible, and you shouldn't even think about my work. You should more just be engaged, and more and more and more be more and more engaged in the whole process. So it's also about creating this feeling of, first of all, creating a mythical feeling of this place. How do we do that? How do we enter a world and find a character and go with a character? And what's really interesting about Martin's script is this idea of entering the world with a smiling person who's then rejected, and you have the same feeling as he has, and you ask the same questions as he has. So therefore, we almost become like the main character, and little by little, you also start questioning what was before that. We never see what everyone else is talking about. We never see what Porrig is feeling. What is it he's longing for? Which is interesting, because then you start putting some of yourself into a situation, I think, and your own relationships. And you also start to, when it evolves and you understand what it's about for Calm, you maybe, or hopefully, or I do, have a sense and feeling that I also understand this character. And I might even have 50-50 within myself.
Yeah.
So it's almost like this simplicity of try to the more less is more sometimes, and the more you peel off and hold back, and allow you and I as an audience to think ourselves and not give the answers. And therefore it becomes almost, we're so used to in so many films and series and situations that we're given the answers, so we can relax. But in this, I have a feeling that Martin and with both with the image and the actors and Martin's writing and music, we tried all the way to hold back a little bit, so you have to invest something of yourself in the story. And then it's incredibly funny as well.
Yeah.
And what is it that creates all these laughs? And then you suddenly also have a feeling that you're caught in this.
That's
So
right.
for me, that balance of the tension, the drama between in the dialogue scenes, and the pauses, the looks. How long do you need a pause for a laugh, or do you give information right after, and then have everyone be on top of their game? You can't just have one really good. You have to like try and level all the different performances and the characters.
That's right.
And I'm extremely. It was such a learning process, and I really enjoyed the whole process we had, Martin and I, in the edit room. Also, just to find this simplicity of saying, okay, what is this island? What is the life of Porrick? And to try and find a way of almost a repetition. You have to feel this daily repetition within the first 45 minutes of the film. This going back and forth of a daily routine, going to his friend's house, knocking on the door, going to the bar, all these things. And then with Carter's music, also, we created this whole idea of these repetitions. So it has these small bridges between the scenes.
Yeah, stunning. You just reminded me so much of what I loved most about the film. There's a subjectivity to it. I actually implanted a lot of my own feelings about relationships onto what Porrick was feeling, what Colin was feeling, what Siobhan was feeling about her longing about wanting to move on, Dominic wanting Siobhan, romantic. There's so much where you have to implant your own feelings, and that makes the film so much more impactful. I want to ask you about Martin McDonagh's use of language, his musicality. There's some great rhythm in the more comedic scenes. An example is in the bar, where Porrick and John Joe and Jerry are discussing whether Porrick and Colin are rowing. And I thought that was the funniest scene of the whole film. I loved it. How many alternatives go through your mind when you're deciding how to cut scenes that are very heavily reliant on dialogue and timing and reactions?
So there's two stages to that, because one is to do a first assembly and see the material for me as for the first time, which is an intuitive feeling, and it's not necessarily going for the right performances. It's more to get a sense and a feeling of a scene and how the scene has been blocked. This is something I always would do myself, and I would always do like a first pass and show it to the director. And Martin and I didn't know each other at all. We had like one dinner. We didn't talk about the film. We talked about us and him and me, and then I would go home to Copenhagen, edit like a full pass, and show the whole film to him. And first of all, it's incredible that someone just allows you and put these things in my hand, but it's also for me to get organized with the material in a way so we can be playful together and try all these things, and for me to understand how it's been shot. He's been, especially Martin, because he wrote it. He has everything up in his head, but I also need to understand it myself somehow and feel it. How does the actors work? How do they move together with Ben's camera? The way Martin talks to the actors, the differences in the performances, the way they deliver the dialogue, the tonality, or in the performances, light and dark, and maybe faster or sad or more happy, and these different things, just trying to start. And then suddenly, little by little, you find that rhythm within a dialogue scene. And Martin's script is like music. For me, it's like reading something with such a big musicality, and it's almost like editing music. My background from tons of music videos when I was much younger is super helpful in these situations, because with music videos you start learning to cut to music and and find a rhythm within a breath or a movement or all these different things. And it's all about that, these small elements of the actors' performances and the way they move and the way they look, and how do you like how much should everyone look at the same, or is it enough only to the two of them? And how do you create the tension in between? And you get little by little by little, you get more and more and more. And then knowing, like, because it's like passes. You go through the different passes. So first you work with the structure, and then you start working with the characters. And some characters are like already there, and some characters have to be found.
Yeah.
Compared to where they are in the situations. And then it's also about holding back a lot, and basically it's more about trying things, right? And feel it and see it. And Martin is incredible in an edit room, I would say, because he came into the room, he'd seen all takes, he had written down line by line what he really likes, and the way I organize my material, we actually were in a situation where we could very fast go through and do a full pass on the whole film with like the first ideas or intentions from what he had seen in the dailies, and then you try these things, and you little by little you find the scene, and you find the rhythm of the characters, and then suddenly this becomes way too much. So it I mean, everything is like waves, and the structure of the whole film, and it's so unpredictable as well. So it's almost like you can hold back a lot of things and information, and it's so character driven. It's just character, and if you're with your main character, and if you're with your characters, then you're almost home safe all the time.
Yeah.
And then we could create this idea of adding the island as a character, adding the animals as characters as well.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that structural, artistic way, musicality, rhythmic way that you edit, I think you probably learned a lot from Sound of Metal, and you brought those skills onto this film. And I also was thinking another scene, for example, where Dominic makes romantic advances towards Siobhan by the lakeside, and she has to rebuff him politely, is so heartbreaking. And I then was wondering, you've got to deal with all the things you just spoke about, but when you're actually dealing with emotion, does it really just come down to what you and Martin are feeling at the time, and what impacts you the most on the day?
I mean, I think the editing is like painting with all the different elements of the filmmaking, right? You have a script, you have the actors adding on or giving an interpretation of the script, and then you have the elements of sound and visuals and music and stuff, and it comes down to what's funny about editing is that when we went digital, you would think that the whole process would be much faster.
Yeah,
because now we can just edit it much faster, and that's it, done. That was that film. But it's not at all the case, because it takes the same amount of time. It's more about the process of feeling it and thinking about it, talking about whether this is right or wrong, trying the things, show it and see how people react. And also often it's about trying to find these, if it doesn't work here, maybe that's not the issue. Maybe we have created something that creates the issue coming up to this point, if it feels boring or if it feels whatever it is. And given that this is not at all a showy film, especially not from an editorial point of view, it's much more about trying to bring all these amazing performances up together with a great script, and then try and find as good a balance as possible.
Yeah.
And take you through this whole journey.
Yeah, that makes sense. DP Ben Davis recently shared this fascinating insight with me about how the audience doesn't really make a lot of eye contact with the characters until quite later in the film, as we start distant and we gradually get closer to them. And I was just wondering how challenging it was for you to take that into account in the edit as well.
I mean, it's a great idea, especially on the set, and as a thought. But I mean, if a scene works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it's more about trying to find that whole the circle or the balance of the whole film. And obviously, eye contact is super important, especially between the two characters. But it's very effective if they don't look at each other, for sure. Especially if someone doesn't like someone. So it was a very rich material. There were so many possibilities. Martin was really clear in his vision and open to the idea that also to try things. So we would have time to explore and to at least know that this is the right direction. And maybe sometimes something, if we try in a certain area, like to go with the character, how much do we need to tell about the character? How much can we actually hold back of information as well?
Yeah.
He was super interesting to work with it.
Yeah, I
like that.
So you won the Oscar for Sound of Metal. I remember during that ceremony, you said that working with Dario Samato, the director, was like following a rainbow, and then on that night you found the God. I love that you said that, and that you loved it. And I'm just curious, what did you take away from your experience on the Sound of Metal and winning that Oscar? Did that give you like more confidence in, you know, knowing that what you were doing was probably you're going in the right direction, and then that you took that on board for this film?
No, I mean, it definitely it gave me the possibility to work on the film.
Yeah.
To be in consideration, because you might know it actually started on as a very sad note that I was brought into this, because we have to acknowledge that this was supposed to be edited by Martin's long collaborator, John Gregory, who for me was an amazing editor and a big inspiration also when I was in film school, and the way he worked with characters and stuff like that. So just being asked, I felt very honored. And then I knew that I felt that it was such a rewarding process, and everyone was so friendly, and Martin was so inspiring for me. So just going in every day and try the things, and little by little feel that it's actually making a change, and you're more and more. It was super enjoyable. Of course, there's a lot of learning processes on each production, and Sound of Metal, especially Sound of Metal, had some amazing performances. But it's also about trying to find the truth in the characters, which I could bring into this and see how can we actually make it as honest and truthful in the characters, from Siobhan, who's almost the heart of the film, and when she leaves, it becomes this tragedy. So you go from comedy to drama, and then she just goes off, and we might all just go off in that situation. But then it becomes like so sad. And Martin telling me from the start, I would love to do like this beautiful Irish film, and it should be very sad. And just knowing that, how do you then then you create these feelings and emotions with the music as well, and the sound, to hold back the sound, so it's the dialogue that's so close to you, and it has a completely different soundscape that you would normally see in a film. It's so distant, all the ambience, but then we have all the plot sounds to work with, and plot sounds are interesting because then you can create with plot sounds, you can create characters. And for the film, it's super important that Porrick has this relationship with Jenny. And how do you create that? You have the visuals that you can see them, but she doesn't talk. So if you give her that small sound of a bell, and you can play with that bell, like before or after a scene, almost like you hear bell, then you know it just brings a smile to you.
Yeah.
And especially not giving any spoilers away, but in the end of the film, there's a scene where the horse then knocks off the bell of a table, and it's just a tiny, tiny sound, and it just brings so much emotion into the film.
Yeah, it's so
If you
damn.
like animals.
Of course. I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you acknowledged John Gregory passed away in September.
No. He was a huge inspiration, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mikkel, thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations on some beautiful work, and I look forward to seeing more from you in years to come.